body of a Salvadorian woman killed by Mexican police arrives in El Salvador. Indian cricket legend Sachin Tendulkar is hospitalized with COVID-19. And Bulgarians vote for a new parliament after months of anti-government protests. Hello and welcome to TeleSUR English. I'm Jose Daniel Lopez in Quito, Ecuador, and this is From the South. The body of a 36-year-old Salvadorian woman who died at the hands of Mexican police have arrived in El Salvador. The coffin with Victoria Salazar's remains landed in the country 1 week after her death, and it's escorted by police to a funeral parole in Western Sonsonate Department. Salazar died on Saturday after being detained by the police in Tulum, a Mexican resort town on the Yucatan Peninsula. Autopsy showed that her neck had been broken. Police opened an investigation into the incident, which resulted in the arrest of 3 policemen and 1 policewoman. They were all charged with femicide.
This is hard to swallow. It brings up a lot of mixed emotions. There is so much pain and consternation.
Ecuador's largest indigenous organization, CONAIE, has thrown its support behind socialist presidential candidate Andrés Arauz ahead of the April runoff vote. Jaime Vargas, president of the Confederation of Indigenous Nationalities, has expressed his support of Arauz and his presidential campaign agenda. Vargas, however, warned Andrés Arauz that if, as a president, he doesn't fulfill his promises to Ecuador's indigenous movements, then they will return to the streets, just like in October 2019, when indigenous movements paralyzed the country over the cancellation of gasoline subsidies. Economist Arauz faces former banker Guillermo Lasso in the runoff elections set to take place on April 11.
Andrés Arauz, your proposals have the absolute support of the indigenous movements of Ecuador. This is the decision of our leaders. Whatever happens, whatever comes, economist Andrés Arauz has the support of all indigenous peoples of the Ecuadorian Amazon.
Ecuador has declared a new 30-day state of emergency in 8 provinces, including the capital, as hospitals struggle to handle a new surge of COVID-19 cases and 8 days of curfew amid of crowds and gatherings, fueling new outbreaks of the pandemic. The state of emergency was declared just a day ahead of the Easter weekend and will last until the end of April. A nightly curfew between 8 p.m. to 5 a.m. is implemented during the first week, while cars can only circulate on every other day depending on their plates. Beaches, national parks, city parks, gyms, theaters, and cinemas are closed, while malls can operate with a 50% capacity. Ecuador has registered over 330,000 cases, while nearly 900,000 people have died. The intensive care units are also working near full capacity. Argentine President Alberto Fernandez has tested positive for COVID-19. President Fernandez, who has been vaccinated against COVID-19, said that his antigen test came back positive after a slight fever and a headache. He is now waiting for the results of a PCR test as well. The president, who turned 62 on Friday, was in isolation as a precaution, but he said that he was physically well. Fernandez was inoculated with the Russian Sputnik V vaccine and had his second shot on February 11th. Argentina is facing a second wave of the coronavirus with a sustained rise in cases. The country of 44 million people has recorded more than 2.3 million infections and over 55,000 deaths from COVID-19. Argentina has received a second batch of 1 million Sinopharm COVID-19 vaccines from China. With this shipment, the country has received nearly 7 million doses so far, while awaiting the arrival of the 11th shipment of the Russian Sputnik V vaccine scheduled for Saturday. The Argentine government hopes to accelerate its vaccination campaign in order to achieve the immunization of the most vulnerable groups by the end of April. New restrictions are also being planned as the country faces a new surge in cases. Argentina has accumulated over 2.3 million cases and close to 56,000 COVID-19 related deaths. The Mexican capital, usually busy with hundreds of thousands of worshippers during Easter celebrations, was calm on Friday as pandemic restrictions affected the Passion of the Christ reenactment that had been performed in the city for almost 2 centuries. For the past 170 years, the ceremony has offered an economic boom for the sprawling borough of Iztapalapa. However, authorities only allowed the religious ceremony to be held behind closed doors for the second year running due to the pandemic. Mexico has registered a total of more than 200,000 COVID-19 deaths, while untested but suspected victims bring that toll to over 320,000. Cuban health authorities have reported success in applying the domestically produced drug nasalferon to people infected with COVID-19 as part of the improved protocol for confronting the disease. Our correspondent in Havana, Fabiola Lopez, brings us more details in the following report.
In Boyeros municipality, in the capital of Cuba, nurse Anaisa sets out to verify the use of nasalferon in this family contact of a positive COVID-19 case, as she does every day.
It's been really great. I have not had any adverse reactions, and I feel quite well. I have improved a lot. I had a little burning in the throat at the beginning, and that disappeared. I have felt good, and we tested negative in the PCR that we took. And how much did the nasalferon cost? Nothing, of course. It's only here in Cuba that you see that. Free medicine, free care.
The country's strategy is that all persons who are a contact of a confirmed case should institutionally isolate it. But in territories such as Havana, where the greatest number of cases is reported, home isolation includes measures similar to the care provided in isolation centers.
An epidemiological survey is carried out. The epidemiological survey is conducted with every patient tested positive to an antigen or PCR test. All home and outside of the home contacts of the patient are traced, and nasalferon supplies are located and applied in all polyclinics with established cold chain.
When it is going to be applied, the basic health team, either the doctor or the nurse, explains how the drug is going to be used. That is very easy to handle, for all ages too, although it is not being used in pediatric care. A drop is applied in each nostril every 12 hours. That is 4 drops for 10 days, which makes up the 40 drops that the bottle contains. Nasalferon is a drug developed by Cuban biotechnology, derived from interferon, which, according to its developers, prevents the replication of the SARS-CoV-2 virus and modifies the number of colonies present in the body, in addition to strengthening the immune system.
Medically, nasalferon is a product that is applied with a prophylactic purpose, which means to prevent infection. In this case, by SARS-CoV-2, the immunomodulatory properties of interferon help to strengthen your immune system in the absence of the virus, so that when the individual is exposed to the virus, the immune system is able to fight it more strongly and thus avoid infection. And in the case infection does occur, the antiviral effect of interferon helps to ensure that the disease, in the case of COVID-19, develops with less intensity, symptomatology, and duration in the individual.
With 93% effectiveness, nasalferon has been applied to medical personnel in the red zone of hospitals, where the fight against COVID-19 is waged, and to health collaborators working abroad. It is also being supplied to travelers and those who lived with them, and to tourist sector workers.
The Cuban Protocol of Action against COVID-19 always took into account as one of the fundamental guidelines to use of prophylactic drugs to prevent infection and passage of sick individual to stages of severity and chronicity.
Dr. Hugo Nordarse explains that there are 3 key principles to the Cuban Protocol of Action against COVID-19. That people don't get sick, that if they do get sick, they don't deteriorate to a worse condition, and that if they do, they don't die.
Fabiola Lopez, TeleSUR, La Habana.
We'll take a short break now, so don't go away. Welcome back. Libya has received its first batch of Sputnik 5 COVID-19 vaccines. A shipment of more than 100,000 doses of the Russian vaccine landed at Tripoli's main airport on Sunday. Libya's Ministry of Health said this is the first shipment of vaccines that reached the country. Around 1,000 new infections are registered daily by the National Center for Disease Control, posing a challenge to a health sector ravaged by years of conflict. Libya has recorded almost 200,000 infections since the beginning of the pandemic and nearly 2,700 deaths. The former Jordan Crown Prince Hamza bin Hussein has been placed under house arrest. Hussein said that he was visited early Saturday by the country's military chief, who told him that he was not allowed to go out, communicate, or meet with other people. Hamza said he had been informed he was being punished for taking part in meetings in which the king had been criticized, though he himself was not accused of being a direct critic. The country's military early denied that the former crown prince was under house arrest. Congo's opposition party has called on the country's constitutional court to annul the results of recent presidential election. The Union of Humanist Democrats claimed that their leader, Guy Brice Parafait Colelas, who died of COVID-19 in France recently, won the elections. The Republic of Congo's president, Denis Sassou Nguesso, was re-elected after securing an 88.5% win. Meanwhile, Colelas took 7.8% of the vote, according to the results, which can be appealed to the Constitutional Court.
Ultimately, the political bureau of Union Humanist Democrats invites the Constitutional Court to rule on the law and therefore to pronounce the pure and simple annulment of the provisional results of the elections of 17 and 21 March.
Kenya has strongly criticized the United Kingdom for red listing the country as a COVID-19 hotspot. Kenya's Foreign Affairs Ministry condemned the UK's decision to impose travel restrictions on Kenyan passengers, barring them from entering England starting from April 9th. Kenya is among 4 countries that have been added to UK's red list amid concerns about new COVID-19 variants. Christian worshippers in Ivory Coast have been asked to limit gatherings during Easter to avoid the spread of the virus. The country's vaccination campaign began last month, while authorities maintain the call for people to wear masks, wash their hands, and respect social distancing. Religious sites around the world are open to limited numbers of worshippers. According to the Johns Hopkins University, Ivory Coast has registered over 44,400 COVID-19 cases and 250 deaths. Hundreds of internally displaced people from Mozambique have finally found shelter a week after a jihadist attack on the town of Palma. After spending days hiding in forests, following a deadly raid on the northern Mozambican town of Palma, survivors have found safety at a shelter in a sports center in Pemba, 200 kilometers from Palma. The coordinated attack left dozens of people dead and more than 8,000 displaced. Many more are still missing after the insurgency. The attack launched last Wednesday was the latest in a string of more than 830 organized raids by the Islamic militants over the past 3 years, killing more than 2,689 and uprooting nearly 700,000.
This is what happened in Palma. The bandits stayed there for 15 hours. The population of Palma fled. 8 people died on the boat, in the water, on the way to Mujane. Another 8 people hid in the bush. People died. The bandits were looking for people. There's a deep suffering.
French energy company Total has withdrawn all its stuff from its Angui natural gas site in northern Mozambique after the Islamic attack on Palma. According to company resources, Total has decided to withdraw its stuff as militants appear to get closer to the site. The company also last week called off the planned resumption of construction at a 20 billion development due to violence. They have not yet issued a statement on that decision. Anti-coup demonstrators in Myanmar decorated boiled eggs on Easter Sunday in the latest protest against the country's military junta. Myanmar protesters decorated eggs with political messages and left them on neighbors' doorsteps and hanging in bags on front gates. Pictures posted on social media show eggs adorned with Suki's likeness and three-finger salutes, a symbol of resistance, while others say save our people and democracy. The demonstration came after 4 protesters were killed Saturday in the cities of Bago and Monigua, putting the death toll to 557 since the protest began in early February.
The young people who don't want to stay under the military dictatorship, they are going out on their own free will for the country, for the people. That's why they join us and help us to fight against the military junta. The soldiers are threatening to shoot the people using their power when we go out. So we are doing this mobile strike peacefully so they cannot shoot us.
The cricket world have united to send support to Indian legend Sachin Tendulkar after he was hospitalized with COVID-19. The 47-year-old little master of batting is one of the most high-profile cases in India. Tendulkar is the highest run scorer ever in Test matches and one-day internationals. He retired in 2013 after playing in 200 Tests, in which he made close to 16,000 runs. Many Indian Premier League teams released messages, champions the Mumbai Indians, where Tendulkar is an advisor, say they were rooting for the batting star. Former Pakistan rival Wasim Akram also sent special wishes.
Sachin Tendulkar is a god of cricket. We call him as a god. Okay, so I feel that he will recover in some short time.
Along with me, I don't think there's anyone in the world who is not praying to God for the speedy recovery of Sachin Tendulkar. We pray that Sachin Tendulkar will defeat coronavirus and return home very soon in good health from the hospital.
Bangladesh has announced a new nationwide lockdown starting from Monday to curb a new surge in COVID-19 cases.
The coronavirus infection is spreading fast. The infection and death rate is increasing every day. In such a situation, the government of Sheikh Hasina has decided for a countrywide lockdown from Monday.
More news in a minute. Stay with us. Welcome back. Iran's Deputy Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi has said that his trip to Vienna for nuclear negotiations will not involve talks with the United States either directly or indirectly. He added that Iran's demand was for all sanctions to be lifted before it returned to fully comply with the accord.
In Vienna, we won't have any talks with Americans, either directly or indirectly. We are negotiating with the Joint Commission of the Nuclear Deal, meaning the 4+1 countries. We will rely to them. Our demand and condition for returning to the nuclear deal. Our demand is that America must first resume complying with its entire commitments in the nuclear deal and lift the whole sanctions. After it is done, we will verify and return to the deal as well. We have no step-by-step plan for Iran and the US for returning to the nuclear deal. We won't accept such a plan. We believe there is only one step, which is that America must remove all sanctions that were reimposed during Donald Trump's era against us, or those that were recently imposed in another shape or form.
11 people have been killed and 19 people were injured after a truck and a passenger bus collided in eastern China. The accident happened in the early hours of Sunday, with the truck crossing the central divider in the middle of a highway in the eastern province of Jiangsu and collided with a bus traveling in the opposite direction, causing the bus to overturn. 2 other trucks driving behind the bus also rolled over when they attempted to avoid the accident. Bulgarians have gone to the polls to elect a new parliament after months of anti-government protests. The vote is widely seen as a referendum on the center-right Prime Minister Boyko Borisov, who hopes to win a 4th term in office. Support for Borisov at home and abroad began to erode after thousands took to the streets accusing his government of meddling with oligarchs failing to eliminate graft and poverty and overhaul the judicial system. Still, opinion polls suggest that while the vote may produce a fragmented parliament that will struggle to elect a new government, Borisov's Zegrev party will end up as the biggest in the chamber.
This moment is decisive for Bulgaria. Please vote and don't let anybody else decide your future and the future of your children.
Former French minister and scandal-ridden tycoon Bernard Tapie has been beaten up along with his wife during a burglary. Tapie, the former owner of Adidas, and his wife were asleep when four men broke into their house outside Paris just past midnight. They were beaten and tied up with electrical cords before the burglars ransacked their house in search for valuables. His wife, Dominique, managed to free herself and call the police. The burglars made off with 2 watches, earrings, bracelets, and a ring. Tapie was found guilty in a string of cases for corruption, tax fraud, and misuse of corporate assets, went to prison for 5 years, and was stripped of the right to stand in any election in France.
They were woken up in the middle of the night at 2 o'clock in the morning by 4 individuals who attacked them with extreme violence, who hit them, who tied them up, who pulled her by the hair, because obviously there was treasure somewhere and they had to find it. But there is no treasure. I think that their violence was all the stronger because they didn't get anything, because overall there wasn't much to take.
Hundreds of people in the United Kingdom have rallied against the government's police, crime, sentencing, and courts bill. Demonstrators say they fear that the new police bill will severely restrict their right to protest. The proposed bill, which passed its second reading in the parliament last month, is set to modify the existing public order legislations to make it easier for police to ban peaceful protests if they were considered likely to cause disorder. Italy has entered a 3-day nationwide lockdown in a bid to fight a new wave of the coronavirus pandemic. All regions are now classified as red zones, with almost all shops shut down. Restaurants and bars are open for takeaway only, and people are only allowed to go out for essential reasons. Residents are allowed to exercise near their homes. Visiting relatives during the weekend is also permitted, but limited to 1 visit per day. Italy reported 376 coronavirus deaths on Saturday and over 21,200 new cases.
Limited movements are allowed for family matters. In conjunction with the habits of the Italian families who gather in this period, movements are allowed only within certain time slots. 2 persons and minors only, and once per day. Businesses and shops are momentarily closed. So there is less movement of people because the more people go around, the more the contagion risk.
Pope Francis has held a scaled-back way of the cross procession this Good Friday in a nearly empty St. Peter's Square due to coronavirus restrictions. It was the second consecutive year that the Via Crucis procession, commemorating the last hours in Jesus' life, was not held at Rome's ancient Colosseum. The service at the arena normally draws thousands of pilgrims and tourists. Candles in the form of a huge cross dotted an empty St. Peter's Square, as only some 200 people took part in the ceremony in St. Peter's Basilica. And we come to the end of this news brief. You can find this and many other stories in our website at telesurenglish.net. And join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. For TeleSUR English, I'm Jose Daniel Lopez. Thank you for watching.